We've all heard soil health is key to everything you do when it comes to growing your own food. But what does that actually mean and what does it look like? What I want to do today is talk to you about pathways. They are completely overlooked, incredible soil builders that can add a huge amount of nutrition and fertility back into your soil, not to feed what's in your beds, but to feed what's going on underneath. Stay tuned, got some awesome footage of some really cool things going on. But in essence, I'm hoping after today, you are going to spend a lot more time investing into your vegetable garden pathways. So if you have a look at this square foot gardening bed in front of me, it is packed with goodness. It is thriving and the roots and plants are very closely spaced together. How they get to do this well is through soil health. There are no sprays, no pesticides, no fertilizers, just good soil. How do you know when you're getting good soil? That is the key. And as soon as you start seeing this symbol, which I'm going to show you now, you can be assured your soil is starting to thrive. It's creating underground networks and your soil is starting to feed your plants, not what you feed your plants. So in essence, what we're here for today is, I'm not sure if you can see, but I will definitely be bringing you in close, are all of these mushrooms. There are mushrooms everywhere. Now, this specific side of the garden is about 3 years old. I've been spending a lot of time, putting in a lot of effort, building up the soil structure here. Because we have very sandy soil, it's taken a long time to start building up healthy, organic, living soil, especially in the pathways. What I've done is I've taken horse manure. I have interrogated the owner of the horse. Don't worry, she only uses Lucerne, non-sprayed, certified organic. She gives her horses certain dewormers that do not contain ivermectin and all of that. So if you want to use something like horse manure, which is incredibly efficient at breaking down and creating healthy underground soil, then make sure you ask the right questions. Are you sourcing your hay and food organically? Do you know if they're being sprayed? Because if that's passing through the horse, it'll pass into your soil and you're going to undo a lot of the greatness that you are trying to achieve in your soil. In essence, what it is layers and layers and layers of horse manure. As they break down at the bottom, the top ones keep being layered, and what happens is the mycelium feeds on all the carbon in the soil. As soon as you lift a piece of this horse manure, you'll see white networks and spider webs everywhere. Now that is the mushroom mycelium that is busy breaking down that organic matter, and what it's giving us are mushrooms. The mushrooms are the fruiting bodies of the mycelium, so you might not have mushrooms for a couple of years. I haven't had them for 3 years since I started here. We've had a lot of rain this year and suddenly I have an explosion of mushrooms everywhere. And that to me is a signal that finally, after so much time, the soil and the pathways in this garden bed are at its peak and its prime. So why is it so important for me to invest in my garden pathways and create garden pathways that are busy feeding the soil in the garden? Well, it's because of all of these. In this small space, I have 11 fruit trees. I have a naartjie, nice big olive over here. I have a nectarine, peach, pear, olive, lemon, another pear, a persimmon, 3 apples, all in this small space. Now what happens is these roots are not in the beds. The trees are in the beds and I plant around them so I can create almost like a square foot food forest, if you want to call it that. It's the only way that we can really maximize what we can grow in urban spaces, is to have multiple layers and combine fruit trees with raised beds or just slightly raised beds. But what it does is the pathways create the feeding systems for the trees. The tree's roots spread out to just beyond the canopies, which means this olive, as an example, its roots are perfectly in the pathway. This peach, its branches have now extended beyond the edge of the raised bed, which means its roots have also extended beyond what is just underneath the tree. So what is happening is the roots are busy going out into the open, and they are busy looking for nutrients and food in the pathway. By not having healthy, fertile pathways, you end up with dead spaces that are not nutritious, dry, have no living organisms, and what happens is your fruit trees and the other plants like pumpkins, squash, fennel, these plants that have very big, dense root systems, they won't extend beyond the borders of your raised beds, which means they're going to suck more nutrients out of a smaller amount of space. If your paths are dead zones, you're basically killing off your trees, because as they want to expand, they just end up having dying roots on the edges and they're confined to the space. As soon as you invest in your pathways, they then extend out and they start thriving as soon as the roots start reaching all this nutritious ground. So for me, that's why I invest so heavily in my pathways, is to make sure I support that root growth as trees and other plants start to mature. So before we start looking into some of the beautiful mushrooms that are growing in the garden, just a word of caution. Mushrooms can be and are deadly. So make sure you know what you have growing in your garden. I've identified all the mushrooms in the garden except for these two. I haven't been able to identify them yet because I'm waiting for the caps to open up so I can see what the gills look like, whether they have skirts, whether they have the bulb in the soil. And with that, I will then be able to use my field guide to be able to identify. We also have here in South Africa some really, really good mushroom groups with some insanely talented individuals who can recognize and help you identify some of the mushrooms you have. Like I mentioned, I've identified all of them except for these, and they're all harmless. None of them are really great tasting, so we're not going to be using them for eating. We're just going to be using them to make sure that the soil stays healthy. So these two I'm not sure about, so I'm going to leave them, make sure the kids don't come near them until I know what it is. So when it comes to knowing you have healthy soil by seeing mushrooms, just a word of caution, know what you are dealing with to make sure you don't end up in any trouble. So while I'm here with these two beautiful mushies, I want to share with you what I'm going to be doing now that I know the soil has structure that can support mycelium and mushroom growth. This is mushroom spawn. So what it is, it's mycelium from named and known mushroom varieties that I have now managed to get to do its thing. You can see all the beautiful white mycelium. I'm going to punch some holes in here, let it fruit so I can enjoy it. And then I'm going to put all the leftover grain that's in here into the garden. I'm going to lift some of the substrate here, put it in, cover it up. And with time, this mycelium is going to spread throughout the garden. And then when the time is right, I'm going to get edible mushrooms that I know what they are throughout the garden. This one is a combination of chestnut and grey oyster mushrooms. This one over here without the white tape is the much prized garden giant. It's a wine cup mushroom. I have been waiting to get this spawn for just over 2 years, and I'm thrilled that I am now finally be able to do it. These are magnificent mushrooms to have in the garden. Big, beautiful wine, ruby red colored mushrooms that taste absolutely delicious. And then what I have here are king oyster mushrooms. The king oyster is also a really nice mushroom to grow out in the garden. Get nice and big, super meaty, and really delicious. So once you have your garden or your vegetable garden pathways to a point that it's supporting mycelium and mushroom growth, do yourself a favor, get some of these inoculation bins, get some mycelium and grow your own mushrooms, edible mushrooms, in your garden paths so that you can double up and get a lot more harvest from exactly the same amount of space while breaking down the soil, while feeding your tree. It's a no-brainer. It really is the way to go to maximize what you can get within urban spaces. So I hope you got some value out of watching this video. I hope now that you understand and you can see the importance of healthy living soils and the importance your vegetable garden pathways play in the overall health and wellness of your garden. Especially if you have fruit trees, garden paths are invaluable in what they can bring to the garden. Especially in winter, if you're in a winter rainfall area, where all the moisture brings a whole new dynamic to the underground soil life. To be able to do this is simple, like I said. Find a reputable source of, if possible, horse manure, and just keep layering. It breaks down very quickly, especially when you have mushrooms, mycelium, and underground networks. They're all working together to break down organic matter as quickly as possible. So find a good supplier, reputable source, and just keep adding, and you'll see your garden will just explode with growth and absolutely love you for it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, please share it out, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe to my journey, where I'm going to be sharing lots more tips like this, as well as recipes, how to cook up what you're growing in your urban landscape. And yeah, I just want to share my journey with as many people as possible. Until next time, happy gardening.